Imagine a room without windows. The air is cold, dry, and smells of sterile metal and faint, ancient dust. Under the piercing, clinical glare of a laboratory lamp, lies the mummified face of a king who died over 3,000 years ago. Ramesses II. Ramesses the Great. His skin is like brittle parchment, his lips pulled back in a silent, eternal grimace. And lodged deep inside his left nostril, is something so small, so out of place, it could change the way you see everything. A single, wrinkled, black peppercorn. This isn't just a bizarre artifact. It's evidence. Evidence from the scene of a crime that's still being committed today. A crime against our very senses. A crime that reaches through millennia, from the sacred embalming rooms of Egypt to the spice-dusted battlefields of Asia, all the way down the neural pathways to the pleasure centers of your brain. What you're about to see is how this one tiny seed, with its fleeting, fiery taste, built empires, sparked genocidal wars, and engineered a biological craving so powerful that humanity literally redrew the map of the world to satisfy it. And the most disturbing part? The same neural switch that got this peppercorn stuck in a dead pharaoh's nose is the exact same biological hack that multinational corporations are using right now, to control what you eat, what you watch, and what you want, more than you could possibly imagine. So, let's peel back the linen. Because the story of this peppercorn isn't just ancient history. It's the secret blueprint for our modern world of addiction and desire. When a gloved hand carefully lifts the ancient, beeswaxed linen plug, the air itself changes. It crackles. The smell that billows out is thick, complex, medicinal, a heavy perfume of resin, dried flowers, and 3 millennia of profound silence. And then, something else pierces through the gloom. A sharp, green, almost citrusy sting that snaps at your sinuses like a match being struck in a tomb. That's piperine. The ghost, the soul of pepper. Incredibly, still volatile after 32 centuries. The Egyptologists who first found it were stunned. They asked themselves the obvious question, why? Why would the most powerful man on earth, a living god to his people, be buried with a seed from a plant that didn't even grow on his continent? To understand that, you have to understand what this seed truly was. It was more than a spice. It was a signal. It was a signal of unimaginable wealth, of godlike reach and power. Because that single peppercorn wasn't grown in Egypt. It wasn't grown anywhere in Africa, or the Near East, or the Mediterranean. Piper nigrum, the true black pepper vine, is born only in the sweltering, monsoon-drenched rainforests of the Malabar coast, on the southwestern tip of India. A world away. To get from a vine in ancient Kerala to a pharaoh's nose in Thebes in 1213 BCE required a journey so perilous, so fantastically expensive, it was like a Bronze Age mission to the moon. Imagine the voyage. The peppercorns are harvested, sun-dried until they are black and wrinkled, then packed into jars. They are loaded onto somplank hulls, unique ships of the Indian Ocean, their wooden planks literally stitched together with coconut coir fiber, designed to be flexible on the open waves. The sailors couldn't just point and sail. They had to be masters of the unseen, celestial navigators who understood the seasonal pulse of the monsoon winds. They would wait for months until the wind, what centuries later would be called the perilous wind, blew steadily from the southwest, a great invisible river in the sky that could carry them across the treacherous Arabian Sea. From a port in Arabia or on the Horn of Africa, the pepper was offloaded. Now its land journey began. It was loaded onto the backs of camels, becoming part of a vast, slow-moving caravan, marching across brutal, sun-scorched deserts, a shimmering line of dust on the horizon. They had to dodge bandits and raiders, and worse, pay taxes, in goods, in silver, in pepper itself, to every petty king, sheik, and warlord whose territory they crossed. Every mile added to its price. Every hand it passed through made it more precious. Finally, after months, perhaps even years, it would reach the Nile, to be sold in the bustling markets of Memphis or Thebes. By the time that one peppercorn reached the royal embalmers, it was worth exponentially more than its weight in gold. They placed it in the royal nose not just to keep the king's mummified face from collapsing, and not just for its mild antimicrobial properties to ward off decay. They placed it there as the ultimate status symbol. It was a silent, eternal declaration to the gods and to posterity, I was Ramesses the Great. I was so powerful, I could command the very scent of a distant world to honor me in death. It was a masterpiece of geopolitical theater. 1,000 years after Ramesses was entombed with his treasure, the Romans inherited and amplified this obsession. They didn't just like pepper, they were utterly consumed by it. Roman cookbooks, like that of the famous gourmand Apicius, are dripping with pepper. They put it on everything, roasted dormice, flamingo tongues, braised sow's udder, even in their wine and on their desserts. Imagine a Roman banquet. Senators lounging on couches, servants rushing back and forth. In the center of the room, a slave, dedicated to a single task, grinds peppercorns in a mortar. Each tiny black sphere he crushes cost more than his own freedom. That scent, that sharp, exciting sting, was the smell of power. Rome poured its gold and silver eastward in a ceaseless torrent to pay for it. Pliny the Elder complained bitterly that the Indian trade was draining the empire of 100 million sesterces a year. He saw the craving for what it was, an economic vulnerability, a weakness. The trade routes became arteries, and pepper was the addictive drug flowing through them, with Rome as the junkie. The price becomes a weapon. And someone, always someone, gets rich by controlling the supply. Fast forward another 1,000 years. Rome has fallen. Europe is fragmented, a collection of feudal kingdoms. But the craving for spice? It never went away. It just became even more potent. In medieval Europe, food for most people was a bland, monotonous cycle of gruel, bread, and salted meat. Spices were an explosion of sensation in a dull world. A pinch of pepper could transform a meal, and therefore, it became a symbol of a connection to a more vibrant, heavenly sphere. It was seen as a fragment of Eden. It became currency. People paid their rent in peppercorns. Dowries for noble brides were settled with sacks of it. The phrase peppercorn rent, which we still use today for a nominal fee, comes directly from this era when a handful of pepper was a very serious payment. It was kept under lock and key, in coffers alongside family jewels and land deeds. A spice grinder on your high table wasn't just a cooking tool, it was a flashing neon sign of your rank, wealth, and sophisticated palate. For centuries, the gateway for this treasure was clamped shut by a powerful cartel. The Republic of Venice, with its mighty navy, controlled the sea routes of the Mediterranean. They partnered with the Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt, and later the Ottoman Empire. These middlemen controlled the land routes from the Red Sea. They created a joint monopoly that made them fabulously, obscenely wealthy, jacking up prices with tariffs, taxes, and secret treaties. If you were a king in Portugal, or Spain, or England, and you wanted pepper for your royal feast, you paid whatever the Venetians demanded. You had no choice. This single craving, this memory of heat on the tongue, was economically suffocating the rising ambitions of the new nations of Europe. An entire continent was being held hostage by a seed. Someone had to break the monopoly. Someone had to find a different way to the source. This economic pressure is the secret engine of the Age of Discovery. Christopher Columbus, when he sailed west in 1492, wasn't looking for a new world. He was looking for a backdoor to the spice markets of India. He died believing he'd found it, mistaking chili peppers for a type of peppercorn. But the Portuguese, they were more methodical. They gambled on going the other way. Around the colossal, unknown continent of Africa. Picture this scene. It's May 1498. A Portuguese captain named Vasco da Gama, after a brutal, year-long voyage that has seen his men die of scurvy and his ships battered by storms, finally drops anchor off the coast of Calicut, India. He has achieved the impossible. He has turned the flank of history, breaking the Venetian Mamluk monopoly in a single voyage. When asked by the local ruler's astonished emissaries what he had come so far to find, his answer was blunt and revealing: Christians and spices. But here's the thing about appetite: once you satisfy it, the next impulse is to own it. To control it. The Portuguese didn't sail halfway around the world just to trade. They sailed to conquer. In 1511, a brilliant and utterly ruthless Portuguese commander named Afonso de Albuquerque seized the port of Malacca. Malacca was a swampy but essential city on the Malay Peninsula. It was the jugular vein of global trade. Every ship carrying cloves, nutmeg, mace, or pepper from the east had to pass through its narrow strait. By capturing it, Albuquerque didn't just grab the keys to the spice cabinet, he put a boot on the neck of global commerce. Because the most valuable spices were ludicrously, geographically specific. Nutmeg and mace. They grew only on a tiny, remote cluster of volcanic islands called the Banda Islands. Cloves. Only on two other little islands, Ternate and Tidore. True cinnamon. Only on the island of Sri Lanka. The origins weren't a region, they were a secret address. And Albuquerque had just stolen the address book. The Portuguese Empire in Asia, the Estado de India, became the new gatekeeper, a maritime mafia forcing local ships to buy passes, a cartas, just to sail their own ancestral waters. But then, a new, even more terrifying player entered the game. One that was colder, more systematic, and infinitely more brutal. It was not a kingdom, accountable to a monarch. It was a company, accountable only to its shareholders. In 1602, the Dutch founded the VOC, the Verenigde Oost-Indische Company, or the Dutch East India Company. You can think of it as the world's first, and arguably most powerful, multinational corporation. It was granted powers we can barely imagine today. The VOC could build forts, sign sovereign treaties, mint its own currency, and wage its own wars. It had its own army. It had its own navy. All in the service of maximizing shareholder profit. And the VOC industrialized the business of human desire. To see how, we have to travel to the Banda Islands in the year 1621. This is ground zero for understanding how modern corporate power was born. The Bandanese people had been trading nutmeg for millennia. But they made the fatal mistake of also trading with the English, the VOC's chief rivals. The VOC's newly appointed Governor-General, a stern and merciless man named Jan Pieterszoon Cohen, wrote a letter back to his directors in Amsterdam. He declared, "We cannot make war without trade, nor trade without war." He decided to solve the problem of English competition, permanently. He sailed to the Banda Islands with a fleet of warships and thousands of soldiers and mercenaries. And he unleashed an organized, bureaucratic hell. His forces systematically destroyed Bandanese villages. They rounded up the elders, the Orang Kaya, subjected them to a sham trial, and then had them publicly tortured and executed by Japanese mercenaries. They burned the sacred groves, slaughtered countless civilians, and deported the rest of the population, around 15,000 people, into slavery elsewhere in the Dutch Empire, or simply left them to starve in the woods. When Cohen was done, the islands were virtually depopulated. He then divided the land into plantations, called perken, and gave them to Dutch colonists to run using imported slave labor. He had not just conquered the islands, he had turned them into a corporate-owned nutmeg factory, an assembly line of flavor, run on blood and terror. The price of nutmeg in Europe skyrocketed. The VOC's profits were astronomical. Scent had been turned into scarcity. Flavor was turned into corporate power. This was the birth of the modern supply chain. This was the blueprint. The answer is a beautiful, brutal trick of evolutionary neuroscience. Your body is wired with a network of receptors designed to detect signals from the outside world. When you taste the capsaicin in a New World chili pepper, it physically binds to a receptor on your tongue and in your mouth called TRPV1. Think of TRPV1 as your body's microscopic smoke detector. Its only job is to scream fire when it senses dangerous, tissue-damaging heat. The crucial thing is, the chili pepper isn't actually hot. There's no thermal change. It's just a molecular imposter. A brilliant chemical trickster that picks the lock on your heat and pain sensor and fools your brain into thinking you're being burned. Cinnamon and mustard tickle a different receptor, TRPA1, the wasabi receptor. But pepper, our original culprit, is special. Its active molecule, piperine, gently modulates these same TRP channels. It's a subtle, sophisticated burn. But it also does something else, something incredible, that ancient doctors intuited but couldn't explain. Piperine acts like a master key. It temporarily distracts your body's metabolic bouncers, enzymes in your liver and intestinal wall, like CYP3A4, that would normally identify and eject foreign compounds. With those bouncers looking the other way, other molecules, the curcumin from turmeric, nutrients from vegetables, active ingredients from medicines, can slip right past security and into your bloodstream. It dramatically boosts the bioavailability of everything you eat with it. It makes everything more, itself. But here's the final step. Here is the payoff. When your brain receives that frantic pain signal, that false alarm of being burned, it does what it always does in a crisis, it tries to protect you. It floods your system with the good stuff. It releases endorphins, your body's powerful, natural painkillers, which produce a feeling of mild euphoria. And then comes the real kicker, a rush of dopamine, the reward chemical, the molecule of motivation and craving. Your brain basically pats you on the back and says, "Wow, you survived that intense thing. Good job. Here's a little reward. We should do that again sometime." You get the pain, and then the brain pays you back for surviving it. It's a controlled demolition. The hurt, then the hush. A perfect, addictive 1-2 rhythm. Sweetness hacks the system even more directly. Sugar plugs straight into that dopaminergic reward system with no pain required. It's a mainline hit of pure, unadulterated pleasure. And after 1492, the world's two great systems of flavor and pain, the old world spices like pepper and the new world combo of chili heat and industrial sugar, collided and merged. The result was a flavor arms race that has never ended. So let's strip this entire 3,000-year history down to the nerve. Here is the template, the eternal blueprint for how human desire is harnessed and monetized. Step 1. A small molecule, by chance or design, touches a specific receptor in your body. Step 2. Your brain, a product of millions of years of evolution, marks that sensation as critically important, either as a threat to be survived, pain, a resource to be consumed, pleasure, or something shockingly new, novelty. Step 3. We, as a species, build incredibly complex, expensive, and often violent systems, shipping routes, armies, financial markets, global corporations, to feel that exact sensation again. Only safer, sweeter, hotter, faster. More intense. More reliable. Desire scales. Logistics follow. And here is the timeless law of the marketplace: when the sensation is scarce, monopoly is profitable. When the novelty is powerful, insane risk feels perfectly rational. Think about the fundamental fears and hopes that drove this whole story. Our deep-seated fear of food spoiling and disease was met by the hope of preservation with spices. Our fear of blandness and monotony was met by the dazzling promise of exotic heat. Our fear of pain and misery was met by the immediate, blissful consolation of sugar. A peppercorn placed in a dead king's nose is the perfect symbol for this entire process. An audacious attempt to use a tiny, rare fragment of the world to control decay and signal eternal power. You are living inside the echo chamber of this pattern right now. Social media algorithms serve you novelty in precisely the same way that 17th century spice traders did. They are calibrated to be addictive, giving you a dopamine hit of something new and engaging, but just unpredictable enough to keep you scrolling, pulling the lever again and again. Platform lock-ins, Apple's App Store, Amazon's third-party marketplace, Google's dominance in search, are the direct descendants of the VOC's monopoly. Control the route to the customer, and you control the entire market. The old geographic choke points even persist. Malacca, Hormuz, the Suez Canal. When a single container ship gets wedged in that Egyptian ditch, the price of vanilla, cinnamon, and pepper still ripples through the global system, a ghost of the old trade winds haunting our modern supply chains. And now, the neuroscience has moved from the battlefield into the food laboratory. Food scientists are no longer just cooks, they are flavor architects. They have a term called the bliss point, the perfect amount of sugar, salt, or fat to optimize pleasure. They design sensation curves for ultra-processed foods, like potato chips, that are engineered to provide an initial salty fatty hit, followed by a satisfying crunch, and a flavor that vanishes just quickly enough to make you immediately want another one. They are consciously and deliberately picking the very same locks on your brain that pepper and sugar first revealed centuries ago. They are weaponizing your own biology against you. We have always engineered roads to our own receptors. We built the Silk Road for the sensation of luxury and the spice routes for the sensation of flavor. That's not going to change. The lesson here is not to fear the burn or the sweet. The lesson is to see the invisible supply chains hidden inside our own cravings. To understand the bloody, corporate, imperial history written on our own tongues. And to start asking who gets to own the roads to our brains. The final verdict is this: every human appetite, whether it's for food, for entertainment, or for information, builds a road. And for 3,000 years, someone, somewhere, has always tried to build a gate and charge a toll. Hold that idea up to the present day, and you will see it everywhere, in your social media feeds and your fast food courts, in global shipping lanes and digital patent wars. Your attention and your tongue are being routed through gates you did not set, by forces you may not even see. The first step to taking back control is simply to notice. To taste the history in your next meal. And to see, in your mind's eye, the ancient ghost of a peppercorn from a pharaoh's tomb, reminding you that the most powerful forces on earth are the ones that have learned how to sell you back your own desires. This story is just one of countless hidden histories lurking in plain sight, encoded in the objects we see every day. We have another investigation teed up for you right on the end screen. It's about another seemingly innocent thing with an absolutely shocking secret origin. I promise, you're going to want to see it. And I really want to know what you think. Go down to the comments and tell me, what is the one flavor, sweet, salty, spicy, sour, you name it, that you absolutely could not live without? I'm genuinely curious to see what we're all addicted to. Finally, if you want to understand the secret blueprints behind the world we live in, and learn to see the patterns that others miss, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because we decode these archives for humanity every single day. Thanks for watching.